In his video on anti-theism, Angie Antitheist, and being Angie Antitheist, Luddite Romantic made a comment that I did not take up in my response video advocating atheism a defense. I wanted to deal with it in a separate video. Luddite Romantic's comment referred to a comment made by Angie the Antitheist to the effect that she wanted religious believers to leave God out of the ballot box. Responding to Angie's comment, Luddite Romantic said something like, "Leaving God out of the ballot box? For the believer, God is the most fundamental reality that has implications for the whole of life. So to ask a theist to leave God out of the ballot box, you might as well say, don't vote." Without fully understanding what Angie meant by her comment, I want to defend one sense of Angie's comment, to the effect that believers should leave God out of the ballot box. Having said that, I want to first say that religious believers, of course, have a right to vote and have the right to vote in any way that they wish. My comments do not go to their rights. They go to what I think they should do when they exercise their rights. Now, it seems obvious to me that democracy, pluralism, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the separation of church and state should not merely be platitudes that citizens mouth, but be values that they try to instantiate and deepen. And I mean all citizens, non-religious and religious. They all have a duty to safeguard these values and to instantiate and deepen them. Yet it seems to me that many believers hold these values only to the extent that it benefits their liberties and expression and not anyone else's. As a consequence, they use the voting booth and political processes to impose their moral and religious beliefs and practices on others. As far as I'm concerned, when religious believers act this way as citizens, then they are acting in a way that is inimical to these values. Therefore, compared to the importance of the governance of these values in society, I don't give one rip about the implications that believers' religious beliefs have about the whole of their lives. Are believers on board about living in a pluralistic and secular society, or are they not? That's what I want to know. In any case, I believe that religious persons as citizens should hold the secular values of democracy, pluralism, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the separation of church and state. Holding these values is indispensable for living civilly in democratic and pluralistic societies. And these values should have implications for how religious believers behave in the voting booth and how they engage in political processes. For example, really holding these values should make it apparent to believers that creationism and intelligent design are not scientific theories and should have no place in the teaching of science in public schools. Religious believers can think that science is wrong on the matter if they wish. They can even publicize their disagreement with evolutionary theory if they wish. But all that is irrelevant to what believers should recognize as what should be taught in public schools, as is apparent to everyone else who really holds these values. Religious believers should recognize that as citizens, they should not use the voting booth to impose their creationist viewpoints on a state school system that should be separate from religion. Now, if appealing to reason, common decency, and a rudimentary form of humanism is insufficient to get believers to recognize that they have the duty to hold secular values for the secular realm, then they should resort to some kind of theological justification to recognize their duty to hold secular values. Perhaps they should reflect on Jesus' dictum to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. And one of the things that are Caesar's is what values one votes for in the ballot box. It's time for religious believers to grow up and recognize their duties as secular citizens in a secular society. Thank you.